let's move on. Around about the turn of the year when the election happened, the news was going insane about Trump, as they do, and they were creating a campaign to just discredit him in any way possible. People were linking him to Russia, people were calling him racist and sexist and coming out with all this so-called evidence, and a lot of this was coming from the mainstream media, who suddenly have this extreme leftist bias. I'm not actually sure how long this has been going on. It's probably been going on for a while under my nose, and I hadn't noticed until the Trump election. But the mainstream media outlets, the BBC is the one I'm most familiar with who does this crap. In America it's CNN, print media, old media, basically anything that's on TV or printed out on a newspaper is the old mainstream media. They're not as popular as they used to be, because all the kiddies, not just slightly older folk like me, but all the new generations, for the most part, are starting to get their news from the internet. They've started realising that there's a lot of media manipulation in the old media, on TV channels and things, and that there's a lot of bias now towards one side, and that they've been being played for quite a time. And a lot of people are just naturally on YouTube anyway, so they've been getting quite a lot of news there as a matter of course. The mainstream media started throwing around these two phrases, one of which has stuck, the other one not so much. And here's a YouTuber that I really admire, and I love watching his videos, and he makes a lot of sense to me. His name is Vernaculis. We're just going to watch the start of his video from December last year about false news and post-truth. So, clap aboard.
Someone mentioned this concept that I've not heard of previously called a post-truth society, in which it's possible to assert things that have no factual basis. People will criticize it, fact checkers, and it makes no difference whatsoever. That people will keep asserting it, and then other, large numbers of people will keep believing it, even if it's not true.
Hey, did you guys hear about all this fake news? Did you hear about all this false stuff being put online? Isn't it crazy that people tell lies on the internet? Were you aware of that? That people tell lies through media coverage? Did you know that websites will push whatever narrative they want because they're designed to reinforce political positions as opposed to inform people, and they only really seem unbiased to people who already believe everything they say? It's pretty crazy, right? This is an interesting turn of events that kind of vindicates everything I've been saying on this channel for a decent amount of time. You're starting to hear things like fake news, post-truth, and post-factual thrown around on various online publications as well as cable news programs. You tend to hear it from everyone because everyone at every moment of the day thinks that they haven't been lied to and have a way to get the real story. Sometimes that real story is encased on an extremely obscure blog that bashes the mainstream media and then proceeds to bullshit them for the rest of the article. Or that real story could be from cable news, because who else are we to trust? Some random guy on the internet? The idea that we live in a post-truth era is the hottest and sexiest new buzzword in town, and it's being lapped up and used, predictably, to disparage political opponents.
So that was from a video called There's Nothing Post About Post-Truth by Vernaculis at the turn of the year. And yeah, so during the Trump election these phrases started appearing. Post-truth has kind of gone away. I don't know how often it's used these days. I haven't noticed it as often as I did at the start of the year. But fake news, bloody hell, that hasn't gone anywhere. That is, they're still pushing that everywhere. Facebook, newspapers, yeah, it's stuck on for some reason. This is so bizarre. Like, it's so bizarre that someone would say something like fake news. Now, the thing that runs through my head as soon as I hear the mainstream media coming out saying, there are sources of fake news that you can't trust. And And they weren't saying this before the end of 2016. As far as I know, I had not even heard anyone utter that before the end of 2016. It was bandied around by the mainstream media, and it seemed to me that it had been invented by them for the purpose of discrediting Donald Trump, because their bias had gone so far left to the point where they needed new tools to instill a sense of not having the truth from what you hear, discrediting the right and discrediting Trump. And if you're a wise person who reads news from the public, you would know to be skeptical and not believe everything you read anyway before this time. There are people who are just dumb and sheep, and they just pick up a newspaper or they watch a TV show, news program, and they just believe everything that's in it. But there are a lot of us who are really skeptical and have always known that, never believe what you read. Always read something with a pinch of salt. Just realize that news isn't authority. Any article or report that comes your way has a certain amount of bias in it naturally by the author of that article imparting their views into what's going on. And to say suddenly there's fake news in the world, guys, there's fake news, you should watch out, there's a lot of fake news going around, or it's just starting to be generated, especially on the internet. You have to suddenly, I mean that strikes me as a very strange thing to say, because who decides what is fake and what is true? The only way you're really going to persuade people is if you have evidence, like demonstrable evidence, as if you're showing someone a science experiment that could be easily reproduced by them if they've seen all the parts laid out on the table in front of them of how the thing's meant to work, and they can reproduce it for themselves, with this evidence, and you give them the figures of how you've done the test. You can't really, news reports aren't really like that. They're kind of organic things based on society and how people interact, which has a lot of kind of grey area of how people are feeling and how much they lie to you as a reporter, and how much you're seeing which is being hidden or obscured by you because you're only seeing an event from a certain angle or something. And to suddenly come out and say there's a lot of fake news around, you can't trust these sources on the internet. If you're a skeptical person, you know that you can't trust the person who's saying that there's fake news in a place, because a lot of what they're saying has been fake news anyway throughout the years. And this phrase shouldn't have materialised, it shouldn't have arrived, we shouldn't all be saying it. It's just been popularised by the mainstream media as a leftist propaganda tool to discredit their enemy, because people like the BBC gave up on trying to be unbiased for a while now. I can't pinpoint exactly when I first noticed it happened, but I used to watch BBC News religiously after I was a teenager. I don't know what it was. Suddenly turn on the TV and going, oh, you know what? From now on, I'm going to find out what's going on in the world, and I'm going to watch news reports. And I did as a teenager. I turned on BBC News, and I'd started watching. It might have been September 11th that was a catalyst, because that's when I became aware that I was learning more and more about the Middle East and things going on in the world. And for a long time, even though I knew, because my dad's very matter-of-fact and tells you, don't believe everything you read, so I had that basic level of understanding that, there are tabloids and there are people who try and persuade you of things in the news because of their political views and ideas and movements and things that they're attached to, that you don't trust what you read. And I knew while I was watching these programs that there was a certain level, like a low level of bias in every report, and I could tell where it was and how it was being hidden. But you didn't really have that many sources to turn to at the time of the internet, when there wasn't that much alternative news going on the internet. I mean, there was probably happening somewhere, but I guess for a young teen, it's not really obvious where that alternative news is. It's probably easier for a young teen now, in current year, to find alternative news on the internet than it was in, let's say, 2001 onwards, when I was watching news and trying to find out about as much news as I can. And as I was saying, I can't pinpoint when this happened with the BBC, but somewhere around the 2010s, it started having bias. And I started noticing it along with all this social justice stuff. But I really fucking noticed it at the turn of this year at the election. And as soon as they started using terms like fake news and post-truth, I was like, fuck it. We can't fucking trust them anymore. They've gone crazy. They've gone too far. They're going around telling people of what people should already know anyway. But what are they doing? Rounding up the dumb people who watch their shows, like, and can't think for themselves. Like, not the skeptical people, but the people who buy into stuff and take in anything. Are they pandering to that crowd to try and persuade them that, there is fake news in the world, by the way, but it's not us. It's never us. It's stuff on Facebook. It's stuff on the internet. There are people writing blogs and articles on the internet now. Did you know this? Did you know? You better be careful, because that's all fake news, and it's all far-right propaganda, and it's all pro-Trump, and you don't want Trump, do you? No. Who decides what is fake? That's the whole point. That's the whole point of the whole problem with fake news. Without evidence, without laying the things out on the table and showing the reproducible experiment, who decides what is and isn't fake news? I mean, a report on the BBC can't suddenly tell people this is fake news and our news is true news without evidence. I mean, they're just kind of blurting this stuff out. They're not asserting which things are fake and why they're fake, and what the evidence is that they are fake. It's just a kind of propaganda tool. As I say, that's when I started thinking, I gotta find. I mean, I knew there were new sources of news on the internet. Because before I knew what the Young Turks were, I'd seen them on the internet, and I just thought, look at the format of this. This is a news channel, like we see BBC News or CNN or Sky, but it's on YouTube. The format remains the same as we've seen on TV, but this news program is suddenly on YouTube. I started watching, and I must say I enjoyed some of the earlier things I saw of the Young Turks that Cenk was doing, and I thought Cenk was clever with words to begin with. And then, as time went on, I realised that they were biased too. So, I mean, I thought, well, that's obvious, isn't it? Everyone's going to be biased. But who are they? Are they biased in the same way that the mainstream media are? And I realised that, yes, they were kind of spewing the same things. But then I did start noticing all these other news channels, like the Rubin Report. Okay, so it's not the same format as a news channel, but on the BBC you would have things like Newsnight. Jeremy Paxman would interview people on that show. And it's like a politics talk show sort of thing. He'd have a guest on who was sort of a political guy, and they would get into the nitty-gritty of like world events in an interview style, a bit like the talk shows with Jonathan Ross and Graham Norton and all these celebrity talk shows you also got. And so the Rubin Report came on. I was like, well, this is interesting, but what is it, And then I started noticing that some of the people Dave Rubin got on to interview were people I knew. and liked quite a lot of the time. They had Stephen Fry on. I think that might have been possibly the tipping point, was and this did get popularised, what he said, because he's Stephen Fry, obviously. He's been on the BBC. I started seeing some articles. The feminism nonsense was already in full swing in late 2016, so I was already kind of like, ugh, what is with you people releasing all these articles flaming people for being sexist and racist and things when you've said absolutely nothing. And some of these feminist articles popped up going, oh, Stephen Fry's been on a talk show and he's said some very mean and rude things. I think he was talking about people being, like, having victim complexes and being easily offended. And this was like he was saying some of the things that were the pushback against the far left extreme feminism that we'd seen popping up. And he was on this show called The Rubin Report. I was like, oh, this is interesting, but the guy is from the Young Turks, or he used to be from the Young Turks. So do I want to get into this? Do I want to watch this? I watched the interview there, and I really enjoyed it. And then I started watching a few more. Gad Sad, you'd just seen, and much later Vernaculis, were also interviewed on Dave Rubin's show. And the more Dave Rubin talked, the more he was about the opposite of what the extreme authoritarian feminists were about. He was about talking to anyone on any side, and he was pro-free speech, and he's like, listen, I'm not going to block you, I'm not going to try and shut you up, I don't care what it is that your opinions are. I want to hear from you, I want to talk to you, I want to know. And that openness assured me that there was somewhere you could go, even though he wasn't a news programme full on, it was kind of political world events and things, so and Jeremy Paxman on that semi-news programme Newsnight, he did very similar kind of stuff to what Dave Rubin's doing now. And so it just gave me some kind of hope that there was places on the internet now that were doing news and that they could be unbiased. And I just thought, there's very few of them. Like, Dave Rubin, he's obviously one of these new people who care about news and journalism. And I was already watching Vernaculis here, and he was always talking about the state of journalism and how it's terrible, it's been corrupted, and we can do better, and we can get back to being kind of unbiased in our reporting and actually thinking about what the fuck we're saying and not injecting our political views on the situation, just presenting what the situation is. You know, there was a standard of journalism that was in the past and that we had to bring it back. So I knew there was Vernaculis, who was kind of a news site. Sargon was kind of a news site. He would bring up various articles and critique them. He'd gone a bit beyond just like critiquing YouTube videos. And then he had a lot of kind of statistics and things to back up what he was saying. So it was like, oh, he's got some evidence for what he's saying. And there was Dave Rubin, and then I started looking for what we now call alternative news, new media, which is almost entirely on the internet. It's done by the people for the people. And while old media and print media is dying, new media is getting a shit ton of views by thousands of people, like thousands more people than I'd ever imagined, to be honest. Looking at, I mean, mainstream media's on TV, everyone has a TV in that house, but everyone's got the internet too, and it's sort of swinging more in that direction. Everyone seems to have a phone that they look at for things more often than they're looking at their TV screen, especially kids these days. And then later in the year, and I'll just do this to kind of wrap up this subject because I've talked long enough about this particular video, but to continue the actual subject of this strain of thought, what was happening with the mainstream media slowly giving way to new media, there was this guy on YouTube who's actually probably quite popular to a lot of people, called JonTron, and I didn't know who he was. I didn't have a clue who he was, but I know who Chris Raygun is, and kind of watched him religiously after I found out he's basically the YouTube version of a brilliant comedian. And Chris Raygun knew this other YouTuber, JonTron, and said he was one of his inspirations in a video. And after he said that, Sargon got JonTron on a stream, and it went really well. A lot of people watched it, and I think a lot of people who used to watch this JonTron dude on his own channel were feminists and weren't even aware that JonTron was against feminism in his mind. He just didn't really say anything in his public video making. So JonTron jumps on this stream with Sargon of Akkad, and Sargon's really surprised all of a sudden that this JonTron dude is actually what we call red-pilled, as in he knows he's not a normie. He's not uninitiated to the great regression, the culture war of feminism versus the pushback against extreme feminism. He is red-pilled. He knows about it. Like he knows what's going on, and he's against it. And suddenly JonTron's viewers are up in an uproar because he's appeared on the stream going, fuck feminism, and reacting as they do, they call him a Nazi. I'll just dip into Chris Reagan's vid here just for a moment or two, so you can see the reaction our side had to this whole event.
Put aside the comedy for a little bit and kind of speak to you from the heart, just a stream of consciousness about something that I feel like talking about. And today, there's no more relevant topic than the shitstorm that's following JonTron's appearance on Sargon of Akkad's live stream. Now, a lot of people, including myself, were shocked to see JonTron appear on that live stream, but I was shocked for a different reason. I was shocked to see JonTron on Sargon's live stream because for such a long time, people like Sargon and people like me and people like Shu and Skeptic, we've been kind of demonized as sort of racist, xenophobic, just basically every buzzword you can think of that applies to the worst human beings, even though we're nowhere near those things. I'm not racist, I'm not sexist, I'm not homophobic, I'm
not alt-right.
I'm pro-gay most things. There are all these words that we've been kind of slandered with over the last couple of years, and, we're used to it. Us guys, we got this exercise down pat. You say something controversial like, the wage gap isn't exactly what you think it is. It's actually far different and has nothing to do with sexism at all. And that is apparently viewed by people as sexist. And then, we see that and we laugh at it and then we go on about our daily lives because ultimately, I don't think we care because we've been catching shit for so long. But JonTron is an interesting case because he's this big YouTube persona. He's this big channel, this big comedian who's made a living kind of making a joke out of video games. Something completely apolitical. There's no politics in his reviews. He doesn't ever espouse any political, anything political in really any of his videos. So to see him on Sargon's live stream was really just a shock to see someone so fed up by the environment that he's in, and so fed up with the circle jerk that he can't express himself openly that he felt it was the best way to go about it was to go on Sargon of Akkad's channel and Sargon of Akkad's live stream and just vent about it. And it was really cathartic to see. So cathartic to see. I was really happy to see that he joined the stream because it telegraphed to me that not everybody has drank the Kool-Aid. Not everybody is as ideologically driven. Not everybody is as dogmatic or religious about their politics as most people seem to be these days. And it was a nice thing to see. But the internet, of course, as with anything, they will take something nice and completely ruin it. Good Lord. And this whole thing is no different. Everybody is now calling JonTron a Nazi, a white supremacist, a racist, a pile of filth.
JonTron comes out in full support of fascism. JonTron openly collaborating with candidate for dumbest person alive, Sargon of Akkad. In case you doubted, John was a sack of Nazi filth. JonTron got kicked off of game groups because he's a fascist. It's amazing how JonTron can just willingly come out as a full-fledged racist like this and not realise why people don't.
Subhuman, everybody's, tons of people are unsubscribing. from his channel. Not that I think it matters because he's so big that just the new people are just going to come to watch him. I don't think it's going to really affect him that much.
A popular YouTuber gets called a Nazi by the feminists, and we're all kind of used to that. We're all kind of used to that, but these articles flaming JonTron and calling him a Nazi for not saying anything Nazi-ish were the start of something that grew bigger. Because what followed JonTron almost immediately after was PewDieGate. The largest, I think one of the largest, if not the largest YouTube channel on the entire site. So millions of viewers. Fucking dwarfs most of the mass media publications now in viewership. And he got the JonTron treatment in a very similar way, and it was from the Wall Street Journal, which is a mainstream news publication in America. Wall Street Journal, WSJ, which is a very appropriate acronym, don't you think? It's got all the same letters that you need to explain them. They went after PewDiePie, the biggest YouTuber on YouTube. Was always kind of like a fun vlogging channel, did a little bit of gaming, did a lot of jokes and humour, and I think he made fun of the Nazis. He made fun of Hitler, and Wall Street Journal decided to turn this into he is a Nazi, because nowadays, apparently, if you take the piss out of the Nazis via mockery, you become one of them. Such is the logic of the SJWs, and now the WSJ. So I'm gonna let Philip DeFranco, who is another new media alternative news channel. Used to be a vlogger, now he's more of an alternative news channel. Very good one, very unbiased as far as I can tell. Talks like a friggin' rocket train at the speed of light. So many words coming out of his mouth per second, you've got to kind of pay attention to keep up, so pay attention. Phil's going to fill you in.
The Franco Show, and let's just jump into it. And the first thing we're going to talk about today, most requested story today, huge entertainment, business, and YouTube news. And that is the biggest YouTuber on this site, PewDiePie, aka Felix. He has been dropped and kicked out of his MCN by Disney. He has now had his YouTube Red series canceled by YouTube. And additionally, YouTube announced that they had kicked Felix off of their Google Preferred tier, which is their premium family-friendly tier of advertising. So massive news in my industry, and it wasn't just on the YouTube blogs and websites, it was on the mainstream outlets. Hell, I saw J.K. Rowling tweeting about this. She was not a fan of Felix. So the question is, well, why? Well, in part, it's due to the scandal and outrage we've talked about before. If you don't remember, Felix previously made international news because he went to the website Fiverr and he decided to mess around. In a video he posted, he showed a guy dressed up as Jesus saying Hitler did nothing wrong.
Just want to let y'all know that Hitler did absolutely nothing wrong.
He got these guys to make and hold up a sign that said "Death to all Jews," and they danced and laughed while holding it.
Look at his face.
There was that video, and there was that whole fallout where those guys got kicked off of Fiverr, then they were reinstated. There was outrage against Felix, but there was also a lot of support, especially after Felix explained why he was doing this. And for the most part, that had settled down, but then the Wall Street Journal stepped in. They said while researching his channel, they found that since August, on 9 separate occasions and 9 videos, he has used anti-Semitic jokes or use Nazi imagery. Also noting that if you go back and try and do research yourself, you will find 3 less videos, because after they reached out for this story, they said PewDiePie's account also took down 3 videos with a total of about 23 million views, the January 11th, January 17th, and January 22nd videos. But other instances and examples of this still remain online. One where PewDiePie is wearing a Make America Great Again hat, he's watching Hitler. Others where he used Hitler as a segue between clips.
I'm doing the news now.
And you get the point. I'll link to the other example. Now, a thing I want to know before I jump into my breakdown of this is, before all this news broke, Felix actually made a post. And in it, he somewhat acknowledges that he may have been in the wrong. He wrote, "It came to my attention yesterday that some have been pointing to my videos
don't
and
apologize,
giving
dude.
credibility to the anti-Semitic movement, and my fans are part of it as well for watching. I don't want to cite the sources
Apologizing
because I don't want
for
to give them any
jokes.
more attention. This originated from a video I made a couple of weeks ago. I was trying to show how crazy the modern world is, specifically some of the services available online. I picked something that seemed absurd to me, that people on Fiverr would say anything for $5. I think it's important to say something, and I want to make one thing clear. I'm in no way supporting any kind of hateful attitude. I think of the content that I create as entertainment and not a place for any serious political commentary. I know my audience understands that, and this is why they come to my channel. Though this was not my intention, I understand that these jokes were ultimately offensive. As laughable as it is to believe that I might actually endorse these people, to anyone unsure on my standpoint regarding hate-based groups, no, I don't support these people in any way. Thanks for reading."
Yeah, you can see J.K. Rowling got involved as well. She was calling him a Nazi too. And, oh god. That was, she got some flack for that, I can tell you. Yeah, the thing is, it wasn't just Wall Street Journal. They began it. There was two journalists or three journalists. They began this article thing. And they tried to discredit PewDiePie, as you can see, calling him a Nazi, for telling jokes. And I don't think it's right that he apologised for jokes. That was a stupid move, to be honest. You shouldn't pander to people who get easily offended. They should not make their offence into anything, you know. It's like Stephen Fry says on the Rubin Report. Actually, he did a different interview where he said it, but if you're offended, who cares? What is that? That's just some kind of tool you can use on people. Don't be offended, you know. Offence is taken, not given, is a phrase that regularly is used to combat that. The Wall Street Journal came after PewDiePie, tried to discredit him as a Nazi, and we all believe that the real reason that they were doing this is because he has this enormous viewership, something like 3 million, there's millions of people who watch him, which is a lot bigger than the readership of the Wall Street Journal. They were trying to attack alternative media, to put them down, and to discredit them maybe as fake news. So it all kind of ties back to things. So it's not only fake news, because he did a little bit of news stuff here and there, although, as he said, he's not a political commentary channel. And they started going after him because of his viewership. And to go after the most popular YouTuber is, in a sense, to go after all YouTubers. To go after YouTube as a platform. If they can discredit the guy at the top, make him look like a Nazi, then they can go for the next lowest down, and they can eventually discredit everyone on the platform as being less worth watching than their TV channels and less worth finding news from than their newspapers and their now online sites that they've moved into to try and reclaim their viewership. It's not working. And yeah, eventually I think he said, Wall Street Journal, I know what the fuck you're doing. Like, fuck you. And maybe I should try and find that clip. This video has 18 million views, 2 million thumbs up. Give you some idea.
The media generally doesn't like us very much. Variety, for example, posted in 2013, "If PewDiePie is YouTube's top talent, we are all doomed." That was sort of my introduction to the media. This is in 2013. And although I don't think I understood it at the time, I think what this article shows more than anything, old school media does not like internet personalities because they're scared of us.
And later in the video,
I'm still here. I'm still making videos. Nice try, Wall Street Journal. Try again, motherfuckers.
yeah, so that was huge. Millions of people follow him. That felt like the nail in the coffin for mainstream media, because it wasn't just a Wall Street Journal, these three journalists who decided to go after YouTube and as a result make it kind of obvious that they were going after the platform of YouTube and all the alternative media news channels on it from a far left tactical perspective. It wasn't just the Wall Street Journal doing that, but thousands and thousands of other articles in Wall Street Journal's wake also popped up from the mainstream media. There are a lot of them anyway. If you watch Sargon's video on them, I think he shows how many there are. There's like a list of them calling PewDiePie a Nazi. It was just so obvious at that point what was going on, and that was kind of like the nail in the coffin for many people's view of the mainstream media and their reputation. It just started becoming really obvious what was going on and that we couldn't trust them anymore. So that was a huge thing that happened in 2017. Let's get a little bit of light. Thanks for joining me in this weird new kind of format where I'm just like chatting, I guess, chatting about stuff I saw that went on in 2017. kind of a ramble just about things that have happened that have struck me as being highlights that I should comment on, I guess. Just that. Sorry if this video was a bit long or a bit clunky. I might possibly do a couple more like this if this turns out well, I don't know. But yeah, some crazy shit has been happening in 2017 after the election. Current year, should I say. Might share some more stuff with you later on. But I am more of a gaming, vlogging, film reviews channel now, so expect more of that stuff, to be honest. Political stuff breeds craziness. Bye.